Okay, it is going live. Got it. Okay, we're live. Good morning. Welcome to the Oregon Capital Catholic Connection. Rich Angstrom, Patrick Sieng here. This is our very first show, and I'm really excited about it, Rich. What we're trying to do here is do a 30-minute podcast. Right now, we're streaming live on Facebook. Maybe eventually we'll be on YouTube and Modern Day Radio 88.3, their Hail Mary Media app. And we're going to try to do these on Fridays, 30 minutes, just in and out. Nothing fancy yet. Maybe one day we will be. And really just talk about people and politics and maybe a little bit of Catholicism in there, Rich.
Yeah, I'm excited too. I think it's going to be interesting to have the guests as we get to have the various legislators and staff that are Catholic to talk about their faith and how that intersects with what goes on at the Capitol. There are a lot of times there's a lot of issues that come up, not just personal, but things that affect normal Catholics' everyday lives, you know. I do think it's important, though, that everybody knows that Patrick and I come at this from a nonpartisan perspective. There's Catholics that are Democrats and Catholics that are Republicans, and we want them to be free to express their opinions, and their opinions are not necessarily Patrick's or mine opinions, or for sure the radio's opinions. This is just a way of getting information out to the Catholic faithful and let them know what's going on at the Capitol that affects their faith life. But we want to hear what they think about some things. Some topics we'll probably steer away from because it's just too controversial at times. But I'm excited too. I think this is going to be good, and it's going to be really good working with you on this, Patrick. We've known each other for a while, and I'm excited about that part of it. How about you?
Yeah, absolutely. I kind of tallied up our years in the Capitol, and you've got 27 years in the building. I've got about 16, 10 of those lobbying, and so I think we can offer folks, listening, both who are in politics and out of politics, just an overview of kind of what's going on at the Capitol and why folks might be interested generally, and how some of those things might tie to the faith, but then also who are the people behind this? I mean, we often hear about, oh, this party's doing this and this party's doing that, and this bill has a hearing, but do we really hear about the people and their backgrounds and who they are? And so we thought, in this first show, instead of having a guest, and as Rich said, we're going to have a lot of really good guests in the upcoming weeks, some Catholic, some not, really just talk to each other about who we are as your new co-hosts, and how we're connected to the process, how we're connected to the faith, and hope that you all can get to know us over the next however many weeks we do this, and hopefully we'll get to know you all that are listening too. So Rich, you're our token cradle Catholic. I'm the convert. You're the cradle Catholic. So we got two different angles coming at it. So how'd you grow up? How many generations is your family Catholic, and where'd you grow up, and all that fun stuff?
Well, I'm an Astorian. Was born in Astoria. My grandfather came over in 1943 to Astoria to work during World War II at the naval base there at Tongue Point as a self-taught engineer. And
oh, wow.
Just a quick aside, he's got the patent for the collapsible ironing board. But he was a self-taught engineer. And my family, his kids, my dad, and his siblings grew up right there on the Columbia River, hunting and fishing, and just they sound like they were kind of ruffians myself. I think it's kind of funny how the stories I hear about my parents and from Astoria. But I was born in the original house that Grandpa built, and we moved pretty quickly on to Portland, and then eventually Silverton. And then I attended Sacred Heart here in Salem, the Catholic school here in Salem, and graduated there before I went on to college and other kinds of things. And been Catholic most of my life, and I am baptized and confirmed and did all of that for sure. And we go now out to St. Mary's in Shaw as our uh, our church of preference, I guess. And both our kids are Blanchette grads, and they're doing real well. And so pretty connected to the faith most of my life.
Yeah, that's great. So how did your faith lead you? You started as a lawyer first.
Yeah, so I went to OSU and got a couple of degrees in fish and wildlife and forestry. And of course, in the 80s, when I graduated, there were no jobs at all in those professions. So, but I was already headed to law school. I wanted to be a natural resource lawyer, and then spent 7-8 years as a deputy district attorney on the coast, and then was talked into coming into politics in Salem. And so I've been here in Salem representing the construction materials folks for 27 years.
Wow. Wow, that's great. And what a transition there. And before I ask you about, how more about your political deal, who's your patron saint, or who are some of your favorite saints that you aspire to be, or get your inspiration from through all this work?
Well, Thomas Aquinas was my patron saint for confirmation, and I thought that fit pretty well for me, who likes to study, and he's known as the teacher and the intellect, I think, of the saints. And I think he was a good choice for me. My personality, you've known me long enough, I think things through pretty carefully, and I like to hear the policy arguments at the Capitol, not so much the politics and the relational aspects of it. And so I kind of bring his persona. His persona fits me, but I also bring his persona into my work, I think. Yeah.
What kind of things? Well, I know you're a big fisherman, and now I didn't know you're from Astoria, so that makes sense. So this has been in your blood. So what kind of things do you do when you're not in the Capitol, and who do you spend that time with?
Well, my family is important. So my wife and I have been married coming up on 33 years. We were married in 1990. I asked her out on graduation day, literally walking out with my diplomas from OSU. I had to circle back around, and she was playing in the band, and I asked her out, and the rest is history there. But we have two beautiful kids, and Megan and Gregor. Megan's a vet out at Creekside Vet Clinic, a little advertisement for Megan. And my son finishes OSU, and he's already got a job at Price Waterhouse in accounting. He should finish this spring.
Oh, wow.
I've been blessed. I've been blessed with the best friends. Some other lobbyists, Dave Honeycutt, Kevin Campbell, over in the Dalles, OSP officer I was a young DA and he was a young OSP officer. He's one of the most faithful men I've ever met in my life, just really, and his Swede Pearson. But those are all kind of my hunting and fishing buddies, and that's kind of my thing. Doctors tell me I can't run anymore. I was a big runner, so I bike now. Yeah, I try to stay in shape, eat well, and I'm a busy person though. I always have some project going. You and I are realtors. I'm taking other classes. Every session I do something like welding. I took a Ford 350 apart and rebuilt it one session. And
Wow.
in another session, I took welding classes and became a welder. And this session, I think I'm going to work on my Model T. I have a Model T that's been a family Model T, so I keep myself super active and super busy all the time. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I think that speaks to, the political process, right? We have 90 legislators and a governor and a handful of other statewide elected officials that come into a building. And I think sometimes folks think they're experts in everything, but they're not. They're generalists and they're looking to learn in the various political areas. Sometimes they bring a specialty of whatever their background is, but the key is to always be learning about different issues and things like that. So over the 27 years you've been working with OCAPA and other clients, like what are some of the big issues you've specialized in over time?
Well, before I answer that, I do want to stress that point that, lobbyists kind of get a bad name in the building, and you and I are both lobbyists. But, all we are subject experts and we're teachers. That's it. Just like Thomas Aquinas, except I teach about transportation, land use, and materials that we use to build the best best buildings and best roads that we can. And legislators just can't know everything about every subject matter. And I will, tell the folks that are listening to this, there isn't an interest group that I could even think of that isn't represented by a lobbyist in that building. I don't know why people give lobbyists such a bad time in this profession, because all we are doing is making sure legislators have the best information on the decisions that they make, right? And but to your question, the construction materials side gets me involved in transportation issues, and it gets labor issues. It gets me involved in land use and environmental issues, and that's pretty much a full-time job, just handling those 4 or 5 major subject areas.
Last question for you.
Yeah.
How has your faith played into your career as a lobbyist and how you approach your view? I know as lobbyists, we represent whoever pays us, right? But does your faith ever come into um, does your faith ever come into your work?
Yeah, in both ways, the things that I have to work on in my faith, and the things that I do pretty well in my faith, right? And, one thing about that Capitol building is when you're in the soup with the opposition that's opposing you on things, it challenges the best of you and the worst of you. And it's a tough working environment from a faith perspective. And I find that by being more of a policy-oriented person, I can avoid some of the personal traps that go along with the Capitol. I stay on the policy issues and what each word means and what it will do to the people of Oregon. But I'll tell you, sometimes the biggest challenge is your weakness in your arguments is not ever telling a lie, though we make mistakes in what we say, but not telling the part that might hurt you the most as you're trying to advance things. And I think that's just as equal of a issue to deal with, from a faith side of things. But lobbying does challenge your faith. In some ways it's good, but a lot of ways it's a struggle. And I think it's good though. I think it makes you a better person in the long term. What'd you think of that?
Yeah.
We're getting deep
I think
already.
that's great. Yeah. It remains an inspiration. to a
Well, that's
to
my turn to pick on you. I want to, you've had an interesting background. I want to hear about your family and your friends and your family history, which is just incredible. I think people would really like to hear that. It's quite a story.
Yeah, well, I've always been a guy who likes to stay under the radar. So this show is a little different for me, trying to, co-host a radio show. So I think both you and I are kind of like that in that way, give the legislators their chance to shine. But yeah, I don't, so we don't get a chance to talk about ourselves a lot. But you're right. My background, I've been Catholic for less than a year, so Easter will be my first anniversary. But I grew up Lutheran. So my parents came over in the late 70s. My dad was from Cambodia and my mom was from Thailand. My dad was in the Cambodian military during the time of the Khmer Rouge genocide. He doesn't talk much about that time, so I don't know too much about it, but he had just tremendous loss in his family. Brothers and I think 5 brothers and sisters were all killed. His parents were killed, and he and one sister managed to make it out alive. And the story that he tells is, so he was fighting on the side of the Cambodian army that was aligned with the US. And so the story he tells is that one night, in the middle of the night, the US troops come into his camp and tell folks, hey, this is all about to get really, really bad. So you can come with us right now, or you can stay here and fend for yourself. So he came over to the US in a Pan Am cargo plane, dropped him off in, I think, LA, and they said, okay, welcome to America, have a nice life. And so he was kind of adopted by who became his godmother, who actually just passed this a couple weeks ago, Bunny Zeller. And she worked at Redeemer Lutheran Church in Salem and was kind of in charge of refugees in the area. So long story short is, when I was born in December of 82, I was born right into the Lutheran church there, baptized, communion, confirmed, was weekly goer, involved in youth group for the first 20 years of my life. And then I kind of fell away from the church in my 20s and 30s. And finally, at this, just about a year and a half ago, my then wife, we've divorced now, as of earlier this year, but my then wife and I, Christy and I, decided, maybe it's time to be an example to our children and get back involved in some sort of faith to bring them up in. And we looked at the Catholic Church and went through the RCIA process. And she didn't finish, but I finished and am now confirmed in the Catholic Church. And I've been really excited. I go to mass pretty much weekly, sometimes multiple times a week, and I've had the chance to go to different parishes around the country and the diocese here in Portland. But my home parish is here in Kaiser, St. Edward's, and with Father Gary Zer, who's a great priest. And I'm just in this process of getting to know the faith, just like you and I have gotten to know politics over the years.
Well, that's very interesting about your dad's history. That was just brutal. That, the history on Cambodia and what happened over there is just something. How do you, I'm kind of curious because, I've known you since you just started, right? Way back when, and I've watched you evolve over the years. And before we delve into, the dilemmas and the opportunities that you see from the faith side of things, tell us a little bit about your work at the Capitol and how that journey has gone.
I think what's ironic is the connection we have. The first, I would say, paid boss I had at the Capitol, who was a legislator, was Gene Cowan, who represented Newport, who you apparently went through new employee training with when she was a county commissioner and you were a deputy district attorney back in the day, which
That's
is neat.
right. Yeah. I was just started work as a senior deputy in Lincoln County the same day she did. And yeah, we got to sit through a couple of days of training together.
Well, she is who kind of helped me through the process when I came into the 2007 session. uh I was maybe more on the political fanatic side, right? I was a Democrat at the time. Now I'm an independent, but came in thinking, oh, Democrats are the only party that do anything right. And she was a Democrat, but a conservative, moderate one, and really taught me about. So, I mean, that first session, I just learned, there are good people in the building on both sides. And there are some folks who maybe shouldn't be at the Capitol on both sides, to put it honestly. And it's all about our backgrounds and everything that bring us there. And I would say pretty much all of them are there to do good in some way, as she was. She came in not wanting to be a career politician. She had been a county commissioner for 12 years, but came in and said, I'm going to do 2 or 3 terms and that's it. Then it's time for somebody else. So I feel like I had gotten this sense of service and doing what's right from her before I worked in that role. I had volunteered and worked on a number of political campaigns pretty much since high school, and I was in student government, so that's how I spurred my political interest. The first campaign I worked on, who I then interned at the Capitol for, was the great Peter Courtney, longest serving legislator who just retired, and a devout Catholic. So I was an intern for him in the 2001 and 2002 sessions while working as a tour guide at the Capitol. A lot of folks don't know that about me. So that was kind of my intro into the Capitol, while I was going to school, and continue to work on some campaigns. And then I worked for Gene Cowan for 5 years, and then got tucked away in a state agency for about a year and a half, Business Oregon, and then got into lobbying 10 years ago. So 8 years with the Association of Oregon Counties, working primarily on public safety issues. I had served as a reserve police officer for 13 years, so that was a good fit for me. Saint Michael the Archangel, of course, is one of my favorite saints because of that. My patron saint, though, is Saint Augustine, just because of the challenges that he had in his life growing up. He wasn't somebody that grew up directly in the faith, but uh, uh, grew up, had a lot of struggles in his life, and then decided to turn his life around, and now he's considered one of our greatest doctors of the church, which I find very inspiring. So the last 2 years, I've been a contract lobbyist representing a number of clients. I was with a contract lobby firm, public affairs counsel for 2 years, and just recently, in the last 2 months, split off on my own. And so I'm in the process of forming my own lobby business, and getting to know that side of things, and getting my own clients, and things like that. So it's been a lot of fun.
One of the things you say that's interesting is how you started out, wearing one of the scarlet letters, whether it's D or R, and you moved to independent. I have to tell you, and don't you think that a lot of lobbyists that are good, thoughtful lobbyists tend to migrate that same from either side? They tend to migrate towards that more independent, neutral, uh, um, political side of things.
Yeah, I think you're right on that. I mean, you kind of have to, right? I mean, our job, if you think about it, when, as you mentioned earlier, is to really help teach the process, both to the public and to legislators on behalf of whoever we work for. and that doesn't require a label on your name. It requires thoughtful education about whatever the issues are, and the issues that we face aren't partisan. Just like this show is meant to not be partisan, we really want to showcase the two different sides. So that's what we hope to bring to folks listening over the next few weeks. And we have about 5 minutes left here today, but Rich, what do you see as so the legislature just got started this week officially, but they were sworn in the week before and started their hearings today. I mean, the session will go for about 6 months. We should wrap up by the end of June. But what do you see as some of the big issues that they'll be tackling this year with the new governor and leadership and everything? So we have a chance to kind of start fresh. What do you see happening in the next 6 months?
Well, I think having been around the Capitol for quite a while, this is a session where there's the most freshman legislators in my career that are coming into the Capitol. I think there's 22 on the House side. I think that's right.
Yeah, I was at the Capitol yesterday, and I walked through the fourth floor by my old office, actually, where I was in LA. And, to be honest, this is not good to admit, because as lobbyists, people think we know, and we wine and dine with every single all 90 of them, right? But
Yeah.
there were some names on the wall and some faces of people I saw that I didn't even know were elected, right? So, I mean, that's there are so many new people. And I heard it was maybe 50% turnover just in the last 3 years or so.
Yeah.
So this election and the 2020 election, and to talk about the fact that we've been in this COVID deal, right? So the Capitol's been closed. It's still partially closed because of the construction, but this is really the first in-person session where some of the legislators who were elected a couple of years ago are here in the building for the first time, really getting interacting with people. So it's a pretty interesting dynamic.
Yeah, and I think that shapes a big part of what happens. People think that there's a learning process legislators go through on how to be a good legislator. That a lot of times some people come in and after a hotly contested campaign, and they have their hot issues, and they realize that pretty quickly, usually takes a session or two, but they realize that they got to work with people. They just can't run things right on through. And so the process really kind of works on tempering issues, I think, for the most part, and that tough issues get considered, and no one person can come into the Capitol and just bulldoze things over. But with so many, I think it's going to create just a bit of a chaotic atmosphere this cycle. I mean, just my intuitive sense of it. But we do have some seasoned leaders on both sides that have been around a long time. Dan Rayfield's an excellent leader. Tim Knopp's an excellent leader. The governor is very adept politician. Vicky Breeze Iverson from the House Minority Caucus is personable but smart. And then Rob Wagner, who's the Senate president, he's stepping into a new role. I don't know him as well. You probably know him a little bit better, but he's been around a long time. Julie Fahey's one of my favorites. I think she's, like me, very policy oriented and want to see the data and the facts before she makes a decision. So who's at the helm, I think, is as good as we've had, from that side of it. I think they're just going to have to, there's going to be a lot of, what's the right term when you're hurting, hurting the rest of your caucuses without labeling them. So I think there's going to be some fun there. But we do have some issues in Oregon that are important that are on the plate, and I think this homeless crisis is, and the housing issues and what we do with them, all the homeless people in this state is huge. I think from a Catholic perspective, there's Obviously pocketbook issues to consider, but there's also, the humanitarian aspects of people that, just haven't had the same fortune that the rest of us have. And a lot of them have mental illnesses and other kinds of things. Some of them are just, it's just bad luck. But my read just here in Salem, because I live right under the 13th bridge, they're camped all around my office. And most of them have mental issues and schizophrenia and other kinds of things and need help. And, so that's one of the issues that I think they got to tackle. And I think it's important to the Catholic faith, who's got a lot of charity work on helping people like this, to grapple with. The housing crisis that goes along with that, how we feed the homeless. Evidently, with that, there's a crisis in the public defender's office because obviously there's a lot of smaller crimes that get committed, and the public defender services are just overwhelmed in this state. That's something I know a little bit about, right? Is from being a DA, having to then prosecute all of these people, and not all of them, and most of them don't belong in jail. Most of them just need help and stay on their meds and help them stay out of trouble. So I think those are going to be the big defining issues of the state. Obviously, there's a retraction in the economy, so I think there's going to be some budgetary conversations, as Oregon's going to have to tighten up its belt. There's no question that climate change will be front and center for the Democratic Party, especially. The Republicans will want to try to make sure that as we move towards being more climate friendly, that we do it in a way that supports employees and employers, and make sure we don't lose jobs while we're doing it, as we recalculate how we're going to do our thing. Those are kind of the things I think are going to be on the plate this session. You think I missed anything, or what do you think?
No, yeah, I think you've nailed it. And over the next few weeks, as we talk to legislators and about what's going on at the Capitol, we'll share more about what's going on in these various issues. And just with any session, I think maybe a big story may drive another issue that they try to tackle. But 6 months, it sounds long, but they really try to shove a lot into it. And of course, their big deal is to try to pass a budget, which takes a good majority of the time. But out of 4,000 bills, they'll probably pass 1,000 of them, right? And so, they started this week with hearings. The big first deadline is March 17th. That's for us lobbyists. We usually get a little bit of a break or two, or we have a beer right after that, or after the first posting deadline. So that bill for folks to know, or deadline for folks to know, is the deadline for what we call work sessions to be scheduled. So a bill has to go through committee to get passed, and that's one of the first big deadlines. So we'll talk more about that in the next few weeks on our podcast here. Public input is important, I think. Having folks get in touch with their legislators, know who your legislators are. I don't know if everybody really knows who their state representatives and state senators are. Go on the legislature's website, find out who that is, plug in your address, and try to get involved through writing in or calling in, or even attending a public hearing if there's a issue that is important to you. But we've just got a couple minutes here. But who do we have on for next week, Rich? And who else do we want to bring on?
Well, I'm excited about this. We're going to bring Roger Martin in, who represents one of the Catholic organizations in the building, just to kind of go through the bill list. And I'm excited about seeing Roger. Roger's been around for like ever. I think he was like a majority or minority leader in one of the chambers way before yours and my time. But I've been here 27 years. He was the first lobbyist I met. I walked into the building, walked into the foyer, and there's Roger Martin It was just excellent to meet him. He and I've had a lifelong friendship, and he's one of the last of the old guard, I would say. So, but we're thinking about bringing other legislators, Ed Deal, and maybe even the speaker who's Catholic. Excuse me, the governor who's Catholic. And so we'll send those invites out and have those people talk directly to all of you and about the issues that they're working on and how, you know, their job there, or how they see the work at the Capitol tying into their faith. Challenge them some places, I think. I think that'll be fun, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. And just like public input to the legislative process, we hope that folks watching this or listening will write in with their suggestions and comments and questions to us. Our email, and we'll probably get more official with the website and everything, is contact@OregonCapitalCatholicConnection.com. It's a long one, but it's easy. contact@OregonCapitalCatholicConnection.com. And eventually, once we kind of get up and running, we may be able to have live folks join in and ask questions to our legislators. That would be kind of neat. But I think for today, that does it, Rich. It's been great kind of learning about you. And I look forward to working with you through the process and helping to talk to our viewers and the Catholic faithful about the political process.
I agree. And I'm really looking forward to doing this with you, Patrick. You and I have kind of converged our careers together and spend a lot of time together, and I think a lot of you, and this is going to be a great opportunity for just you and I to grow. So it's going to be good.
Yeah. Well, Rich, you've always been a mentor and a friend to me, and I look forward to now sharing the faith with you and moving that forward. So for today, I've already messed up our name, Oregon Capital Catholic Connection, our very first podcast. We'll be with you all again next Friday with Roger Martin from the Oregon Catholic Conference and weeks after. But it's been great being with you all, and have a blessed day, everybody.